This is time for free your mind and your soul. Yo, half the story has never been told. Ladies, you got to demand what you want, and what we want is respect, right? Yo, just sit up on the track, I know so you have to deal with it right. Freedom every time for the sisters. Check this. Watch this.
Here we go now. Listen, if I'm boom boom rule, I be the ruler like Slick Rick. Get with this quick witted Adidas wearing chick. Papa got a brand new bag. Mama got a brand new Jag. Or go tag. I ain't no old hag. I represent not only in the kitchen, in the bedroom, but also in the boardroom. So give me more room. Deny my opportunity. You in jeopardy. Yo, set me free. Don't hinder me. Let me be.
I'm fighting for freedom. I got the heat in case you need them. Straight soldier. Ain't nobody told ya. Hold up on them lies. I know your games and your plans.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Book Slam Extra. I'm your host Jules. I hope everyone's doing okay and has had a very lovely week. It's here on Sunday and it's evening where I am, but wherever you are in the world, I hope you've had a great week too. Now we're going to talk about character dynamics today, or a dynamic character, probably both. You can't really have one without the other. And we've got some lovely guest authors who are joining us today. And my co-host, I'm going to welcome him onto the stream in just a second. So I'm Jules. I am an author of dark fantasy and with science fantasy, science fiction, dystopian fantasy, sword and sorcery, Dungeons and Dragons, all kind of like meshed and rolled into one. With a more of a focus on how mental health and wellness can be nurtured and grown through tragedy and trauma. I also run a small Discord server, which is a nice growing community at the moment of just authors, writers, poets, and some beta readers who are amazing, by the way. And I'm obviously here every Sunday. We are also doing an after dark at some point in the next sort of 6 weeks or so. We're in the process of planning that, which will be very exciting because I know the last one we really enjoyed. And what else do I do? Oh, I'm a publisher as well. Forgot about I have some very nice authors on their way up, so that's very exciting. All right, I'm going to welcome my co-host to the stream. Hang on a second. Hi, Adam.
Hello, friends. Hi, everybody.
Hi. Sorry. They've changed some of the layout here, so I have to work out how it
technical stuff.
Yeah, it's more buttons to press.
Exciting.
I love it. Well, I'm not really sure. I had to play around with it before we came on, but I'm not really sure what I need to do, to be honest.
I suppose we'll figure it out as we go. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'll see how confident I am with it. I don't want to interfere too much with the live stream, so I might just keep it really simple. But what I'm going to continue doing, which is what I did last week, which seemed to work quite well, is actually if someone was talking for more than a minute or so, I actually just put them up on the screen on their own. Just makes it easier for people to see who's talking, especially as we've got 3 lovely guest authors waiting in the wings for us. So be nice to be able to hear what they're saying. Yeah. Anyway, how are you? How's your week?
Hi, I'm great. I'm good. Thank you. Yeah. I finished my edit of book 3 on my series, so I'm really excited about that. I did that. I think I finished on Thursday or Friday, so I'm plugging away at that and pretty excited. Yeah. By the way, I'm Adam Andrews Johnson. Hi, everybody. Author of the Mantis variant and the sequel, The Mantis Equilibrium, both available now on Amazon for paperback, or you can get it Kindle for cheap, $2 or something like that, $3. But yeah, I write horror, dystopian, nightmare stuff, terrible. Everybody's hunting each other and killing each other, and it's really bad and wonderful. But there's a lot of LGBTQ representation in my books, and that's important to me, which leads me to my giant epic fantasy novel that is coming out next year, 2024. I'm really excited about that. It's called The Starting End, and Jules is releasing it through her publishing company because she celebrates weird, unique stuff like what I've written, and it's mostly a character development story. There's adventure happening and some epic stuff, but it's mostly about the characters, and human sexuality is the big subject that I'm discussing in that book, and it's heavy. It's got a lot to it, so yeah, I'm excited about that as well. So yeah, that's who we are.
And yeah, the editor's busy in a way at plowing through that at the moment.
Cool. No Reese and Melanie today?
No.
Oh no! If I
No.
We would all be on today. Okay.
No, I know.
I guess, and our lovely guests. That'll be fun.
Yeah, let's invite them onto the stream.
Yeah, let's bring everybody on.
Hang on a second. Buttons. There's too many buttons. Hang on a second. How do I do it so they're all together?
Oh,
no, that's just us.
There we go.
I went horribly wrong. Oh, goodness me. That's not a great layout, is it? We can hardly see anyone. Hang on. That's a little bit
good. Yeah, that was all right.
Oh,
hi, everyone. Welcome.
Hi. Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Good. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
You're so welcome. It's really lovely having people being able to join us and talk about their writing and things. So, and I've actually got your front covers of your books as well. So,
we'll share those. That'll be fun.
Which is awesome. Anyway, Adam, would you like to?
Let's have people introduce themselves. Heather, do you want to go first? Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your writing and anything.
Absolutely. My name is Heather Fazio. I am in Albany, New York. I generally write or have written nonfiction, I should say, true stories, memoirish. But recently I just started getting back into creative writing, and that's where Magic and Whiskers comes in. It's not a children's story. People think that it is because of the cover, but it's not. So that's a note for myself to do better next time on the covers. So that's pretty much me. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Very welcome.
And Bright Halo, would you like to tell us about yourself as well?
Well, I studied creative writing for 4 years.
Ooh.
And I'm currently a teaching assistant, and I published a year ago my a young adult fantasy book series called Bright Halo, and I've got an upcoming series called The Tower Princess. So that's basically me.
Excellent. Cool.
Very cool.
And Xander, welcome back. You've been on our show before. You want to reintroduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you've been writing?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for having me another time. I'm Xander. I'm non-binary. My pronouns are they, them, and I write, let's see, what do I write? I write fantasy, dark fantasy, and science fantasy, not so much science fiction. And I have one small short story available on Kindle called Gehenna, and I'm also currently working on a novella, which is on a previous episode of the Book Slam Extra. I'm pretty sure Jules and Adam may remember me saying that I'm a Jekyll and Hyde crazy person. So I don't know if you remember that.
Nice.
So this story, Doppelganger, that I'm working on right now is the product of a Jekyll and Hyde crazy person. It is like I kind of retold the ending of Jekyll and Hyde and continued it beyond Jekyll. I also made Jekyll gay because I said so. And it's a story about autonomy, innocence, and also loss of autonomy and self-forgiveness and self-love.
Cool. Well, that sounds like a great dynamic character, like what we're going to be talking about today. Heather, do you want to tell us about any of the characters in your anything, either your nonfiction or the fiction characters that you've created?
Oh boy. Well, the nonfiction characters are real. So today's a hard day. It's the short stories that I wrote for the Court Jester series involve experiences that I've had as a child with my mom. And she passed 4.5 years ago. Today's her birthday. So I don't know if I really want to get too deep into that. It's just the timing of everything. So for Magic and Whiskers, it's fiction. Those are kind of based on real characters too. The first 2 black cats that I adopted. So yeah, I mean, Magic is based off the first black cat. That's Kramer, and he was vicious. I mean, he was one of the he was like the cat that you don't ever want to adopt. And so I kind of started with that, and the story took off from there. The second cat that I adopted, Ditto, that's Whiskers. I changed his sex to female. And so it's just the dynamic between the two. But of course, I amped it up. We have a third character, Cheddar, who is the antagonist. And so, there's a lot going on. I was really into the story. It's been like simmering in my head, and then I finally sat down and wrote something.
Yes.
And then had beta readers, and it just evolved from there into something much bigger than I thought it would be. But it is a short story too, so it's only 48 pages front to back. So there is a second book and then a third book, of course, coming, because it went in directions that I didn't expect it to go because of the characters that I was writing. So yeah.
Cool. Awesome. We look forward to hearing more about the cats. That's exciting.
I know. It's weird. It is told from the perspective of the cats. So
Cool.
I don't,
That's
people
clever.
say that I did a good job on that, but who knows? I don't know.
Well,
Nobody knows.
if you're comfortable, we'd love to hear you read a little bit of it later to us. That'd be great.
Well, I'm thinking about that still because it is such a short story,
no
but
pressure.
I mean, there's a possibility. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Bright Halo. Is that a good name to call you? Is that okay?
Yeah, you can call me that. I should put my bill name, shouldn't I? I'm not sure.
Whatever. No, totally. Whatever. We've had people
Whatever you like.
We've had people use Twitter and Instagram handles. No, whatever feels good is perfect.
Yeah.
So that's fine. So tell us about your characters a little bit.
Can I actually show my book cover? Sorry.
Yeah, please do.
I write my books in episodes. So I've got 5 episodes out at the moment. I write like 20K per episode.
Okay.
And each episode's got its own kind of vibe. I basically got the idea from this when I had a dream when I was 16. And I was like, the girl was like in high school, and then she like went through portals of different worlds. Wow. So that's how it started. Because most of my characters, I kind of just write down anything. It's like meeting a stranger, then becoming friends with them. That's how I kind of see character development and see how writing is. It's just like meeting people and getting to know them. Sometimes they're shy and they'll be so difficult to write. Or sometimes the chat box, you're like, come on, you're gonna keep me up all night writing. That's how I write. So yeah.
Awesome.
It's a really unique way of writing.
And same thing. We'd love to hear you read some of your book.
Yeah,
if that's
I'd probably
acceptable to you, it'd be great. We'll have
I'll read my upcoming one that's not out yet because it's a bit of a teaser, I suppose.
I'm sorry.
Read whatever you like.
I'll read this one that's coming out. That's coming out in May, so it's like it's brand new. So I'll read that.
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
I don't have that front cover. Sorry.
Yeah, we've got 3 front covers, and we'll put them up later. We'll share everybody's covers.
Yeah.
Jules, what about your character Ray? You want to tell us a bit about her?
I can do. Yes, these covers are changing, so these are in the process of being developed at the moment. But that's from my series with Ray. It's dark fantasy. She is basically thrust into this world at the start of a war as a teenager who has no understanding of anything to do with what's going on, and we see it from her eyes only. It's first person, so you get to learn things when she does. And there's fantasy elements in it, science fantasy and sword and sorcery and all that kind of stuff. But the real center point of it is how you can experience something really traumatic and find a path to recovery. And there are monsters in it as well, which I use as metaphors for her not dealing with her issues. And the longer it goes on without her dealing with it, the monsters get bigger and bigger and scarier and scarier. But the monsters themselves are real in her world. It's just my interpretation of them. And so it follows her progress through normal teenagehood through to becoming a great warrior. And I'm currently writing book 3 at the moment. So watch this space.
Awesome. So go ahead.
The topic today is talking about character dynamics and also how to write dynamic characters, and I think it can be both ways, or one way or the other way. I think that if you I talk about character dynamics, it's more about looking at how they interact with the world around them and other people and characters and other beings and things like that. Whereas if it's the dynamic character, it's talking about them and what makes them tick and how we make them come alive from written words to someone's mind. And I'm quite interested to hear what you all have to say about it, because obviously we all have our own characters that are kind of like sitting in our heads and having conversations with us and telling us off and waking us up in the middle of the night going, excuse me, I have another piece you need to write. So yeah, I'm quite interested, and we can talk about both those elements, character dynamics and a dynamic character, because I think that they are both working together.
I think they're related. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So Adam, did you want to tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are?
Oh, sure. I'm excited to read a little section. The representation that I put in my books, I put drag queens. I've got several gay couples that are important, and my drag queens are so fabulous. They're so over the top, and there's moments when everything's horrible. Like I said, my books are pretty gruesome and terrible, and it's just these little light moments where you get experience with these great people who just happen to be wonderful, and they help this kid who's got, so it's just, I like putting those characters, and that leads to, like you're saying, the dynamic character often leads to a dynamic encounter between someone else, so yeah, I'm going to read a drag party where everybody's dancing on the stage, and that's the part I'm going to read today. So it's going to be dynamic.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm opening it to everyone really as a thought. What do you think makes a character dynamic, and what makes a dynamic character? We can have an open discussion on that. It's absolutely fine. Jump in at any time. Can we share my thoughts?
Yeah.
Would that make it easier?
Tell some more.
I think for me, if I'm reading a book, when I'm reading, if I see it playing out in my mind, then it becomes a dynamic interaction that I have with what's going on in the story. And if I have that, I then lean more into finding out more about the characters and more about what's going on. I think if you've got a character who has flaws, who doesn't get things right, who makes mistakes, who gets it wrong, who loses friends, who says the wrong thing, eats the wrong thing, does the wrong thing, whatever. I think all of those add into building a character that is someone who you can link with, someone who's got flaws themselves. So,
okay. So, what are some of the major flaws of any of your characters? You want to start, Jules?
Good question.
Major flaw that makes them more dynamic. Yeah.
Ray's impatient. She's impatient. So she hasn't got, but she has a lot of questions in her mind about what's going on, but she never actually asks anyone. Like, she never really thinks to actually say, if I ask the right question, I'll get the right answer. I will just ask what they think I need to know and what I think I need to know and get it wrong. But she also, with her impatience, she then uses that in book 2 to murder someone.
Oh.
You like mumbled through your words to like murder someone.
Basically off real life. No, joke. She's very impatient, but she gets very angry quickly as well. She's very impetuous, so she thinks after she's actually done it. She's very brave and courageous, and she puts her family at the forefront of absolutely everything, and that is the entire drive of what she does. But she makes a lot of mistakes, and at the end of book 3, some of those mistakes start paying off a little bit. She, like, her whole drive in book 1 and 2 is to try and find a sister, and to try and save her sister, and that goes a bit wrong. And she has to pay the consequences for that, unfortunately. So yeah, so she's got some really good points that I really like, but she's also terribly flawed at the same time. I quite like her as a character.
Well, so then let's ask that question to Xander and the other guests. What's a character flaw in somebody important in your story?
Well, so the story that I'm going to read, part of a story that I'm going to read today, the main character, his name is Elliot, and I feel like I tend to, it's not a struggle, it's more so a challenge, where I try to write dynamic characters. And for me, a dynamic character is a character who changes from the beginning to the end of the story. Like, I want to see a distance traveled in terms of their growth for the better or for worse. They could change for the worse, but it's still meaningful. So without spoiling too much of my upcoming novella, Elliot does a bunch of decisions that end up kind of not entirely working out for him at the end of the story. But at the same time, there's I hope I managed to convey that. I tried to, externally, things don't really work out for him. Internally, I was hoping that I wrote him in a way that he changed for the better, at least with himself. And in terms of dynamic characters, there's a balance between having the character change from the beginning to the end of the story, a balance between that and also staying true to the character. I had a hard time kind of thinking about and writing what decisions would he take? Are these true to his character? He's very good at lying to himself. He's excellent at lying to himself. So sometimes when I was trying to write some progression to the story, I was wondering, like, this is just, he seems too honest with himself. Doesn't feel like Elliot, but I still wanted him to change. So there's a bit of a conflict between how do I make the character change, but how do I also keep them true to themselves? Yeah. How do they change how does Elliot change in the most Elliot way possible, I suppose? And I also feel like flaws and virtues tend to endear the character to the readers, and you end up I try my best to write characters in a way that are endearing, in a way where the reader can still root for the characters that are perhaps unlikable. It's okay if you don't like a character, you can still root for them. That's what I have. That's
great. Yeah, and I just want to mention we love spoilers on the show. No pressure. Nobody has to say any spoilers, but we love spoilers. You can tell us anything you want about your book. We love that. So
I suppose I suppose I could give just a few. Even the book cover, I haven't even released it to anyone. So this is a very Book Slam extra sneak peek. Only the viewers are privy to this. So I suppose I could share a few things while I read, but don't tell anyone about this, okay? This is between us and the viewers.
Keep it quiet. Don't tell anyone.
I say, as we are live broadcasting this.
Right. Well, so Heather, do you want to tell us any flaws in your cat characters?
Oh goodness, yeah. So magic. So the way that the characters kind of interact with each other. It's initially two cats, but there's a third cat on the outside. And so they are ruled by two gods. There's Nergal, a cat god, lion god, who is evil. And then there's Bastet, the Egyptian goddess, who is the cat goddess and who is good. And so they in real life, they lived in different times, but that will come out in book 3. So certain cats are ruled by, excuse me, Nergal, other cats by Bastet. And Magic and Whiskers end up in the same house, each ruled by the different god. So how they interact, Magic, of course, wants her gone, wants Whiskers out of there. But then there's things going on in their household that brings them together. I don't give anything away, but brings them together in a way where both of their characters develop. And then with the third, Cheddar, on the outside of the home, if you will, there's interaction that happens there and a kind of battle, if you will. And so how all of those 3 characters, plus a few more, interact with each other is kind of the base of the story and how they grow and change throughout that. And again, I'm writing from the perspective of a cat. So it wasn't easy, but it was just, seeing the interactions between my own cats and just taking it from there and kind of going with it. I just took the story wherever it took me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are all the characters animals in the book?
No, there are the keepers. There's
Okay.
a female keeper, a male keeper, the ones who adopt Magic and Whiskers. And the vet keeper, of course, which that's to provide a little history of Magic and how he came to be in that particular home. And so, yeah, he's not a fan of any of the human keepers at all. I mean, that's a whole thing. But Whiskers loves them. So it's kind of, there's also that dynamic in how they interact, but everything that happens with the keepers is from the cat's perspective as well. So yeah, it was definitely interesting trying to develop all of that, but without my beta readers and my editor Vicky, like I wouldn't have been able to, I think, bring it out as much as I thought I could, because some of them don't have cats at all, and they're just like, what is going on? And then some who do are like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And they're looking at their cat thinking, oh my God, what are they thinking right now about me? So it kind of, so the feedback has been really interesting and really fun to read, which has helped feed into books 2 and 3. So
that's really
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the fact you called the humans keepers.
Yeah, the keeper. Well, the name of book 2, story 2, I should say, is The Keepers. So,
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And Bright Halo, you want to tell us a little bit about the flaws and problems with your characters as well?
Okay, my 2 main characters of like each book, they're very kind of stubborn. They like to do their own stuff their own way. So like some people read it and they'll be like, oh wow, they've grown so much throughout just one episode. Well, some people, like a very few people read them, like they're like very naive and bratty because they're just because soon as they've got a focus and a dream, they go after it. Like Princess, so like for Tarot Princess Mina. I was talking too fast.
No, that was great. Yeah. The excitement is wonderful.
Yeah, sorry.
I know.
In Tarot Princess, in her world, magic is forbidden. So the king has forbidden it, and she wants to follow her mother's footsteps, who did tarot. So she has to become queen, and she's going to be in an arranged marriage, but she kind of has to escape and go after her dreams to become a tarot reader and help the kingdom outside. So it's a lot of what I like when I'm writing, the family dynamic, because like, is the father evil, is the sister evil, or is it just your perception of them? Because they're just trying to protect the main character, but the main character feels conflicted. Does she follow her father's words to become queen, or does she follow her mother's footsteps? It's kind of like, when you read my books, it's kind of like, who do I choose? Who do I like? It's like all over the place.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And that's very true to life, isn't it? It tends to sort of, oh, what's going on here with this relationship? Whereabouts are you from? Which part of UK are you sort of like residing in at the moment?
Oh, me?
North or south? Yeah.
Oh, do you know a little city called Leicester?
Yeah. I'm not like not in detail. But I was listening to your accent. I was like, I wonder which part. Yeah, from my world.
Oh.
Quite nice to have another English author.
I did want to mention that number one, I love cats. Number two, I love tarot. I'm having a really good time right now.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And I was going to ask about the tarot. Yeah, is it tarot the same way that we understand it today with like the cards and everything, or is there much more to it? Did you develop
it? Actually, the characters are based because I got the idea. It was my master's dissertation that I got the idea from, and I wanted to write a positive story about tarot because most tarot stories are like really scary or horror. I wanted to do something like kind of light. There's still kind of like crazy stuff happening and there's drama, but I wanted to do a nice story where she wants to go and help people with the tarot because it's supposed to. I don't know if you've seen this deck, but it's based on the mermaid deck. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. All the characters are based on a certain card, so then you have that baseline. But you keep adding more traits and depth to them as you write. So,
did you base them off of the major or minor arcana of tarot?
It's a mix. Like the main character, it's a mix. And as I go through my series, I'm going to add more cards, and plus I use the cards to create places and.
Oh, that's wonderful!
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah,
that's gorgeous.
It's really fun. But like the difficult thing about creating it, the first episode, I didn't want to confuse the readers by doing like full spreads because like you'd be confused.
Yeah.
So the first episode is more like one card. She talks about that one card and explains the meaning and talks about imagery and it links to the storyline. But as the episodes get deeper into the episodes and people start to understand it, I will start doing spreads the further we get into the book series.
That's wonderful. I'm a bit of a tarot nerd.
I love where people get their inspiration. Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's really unique.
Yeah. So I think I wanted to write it because when I got into it, I did feel a bit weird. And my mum's very religious, and I kind of felt I had to hide my cards. And so it's kind of like what I wrote is kind of how I felt. It's a good way to express it. Because you do feel a bit weird, and especially if you grew up in a religious household and you find tarot and you find the magic, you're like, it's a beautiful thing, really. It's not scary. And I want readers to stumble upon my book and be like, oh, it's not that scary. That's what I want. But
I love that. I love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm very expressive. I did drama.
Oh, no, that's cool. That's cool. You do hear quite a lot of negativity, don't you, surrounding tarot? And there is a conflict between that and religion, which, you know, I understand, but you know, at the same time, let people live their lives.
I love taking the idea and turned it on its head a little bit, and I mean, I totally get that tarot is used as a joke in some instances, as something scary in other instances, and to give it a super positive spin. I just think that's fabulous. I love that. That's great.
I got a bit of a spoiler. I'll say one spoiler.
Spoil us. Spoil.
Okay, basically, with the card, she kind of does like tarot spells. That's all I'm gonna say.
Excellent.
That's cool.
There's much more magic, huh?
That's very cool. So should we do a little bit of Adam, did you say anything about your character? Sorry. Oh,
well, my drag queens, but I've got as far as flaws, one of my main characters, she takes in a lot of like the sort of homeless rabble from the street, but she refuses to trust people. Like, she's not trusting at all, and she wants to help these other like homeless kids and whatever, but keep them at their distance. You know, she's got serious boundary issues, and she doesn't want people getting close. And we learn in the second book that she and her family have had major confrontations her whole childhood, and she's been looking forward to moving away to the big city this whole time. So she's I feel like she's a great character, and people. My beta reader in the second book, she was like, I got to the line where you have her not trust somebody, And I said out loud, Dozy, you don't trust anybody. And then the next line in the book was Ilya saying, Dozy, you don't trust anybody, which I just thought was perfect. That made me really happy. The reader was hitting it at the same moment as the characters were feeling it. So, yeah.
That's cool.
That's good when that happens.
Sorry, it was very encouraging. It definitely was.
Nice.
Should we do some reading now?
That'd be fabulous,
yeah. Adam, did you want to go first?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Let me explain how it works. We normally pop the reader onto the screen by themselves. Everybody else goes off the screen. We'll pop the book cover up as well. If we've got all three of your book covers, we'll pop that up momentarily while you're reading. Yeah, so when it's your turn, introduce yourself again, tell us the name of the book, where we can get it. We didn't even talk about that yet. It was on Amazon. Do you have your own website? We gotta make sure you're plugging your stuff. Tell us where to get it because that's important. And I'll go first. I'm totally happy with that. I've got a section I'm prepared to read.
Awesome. And then we can talk about the dynamics you see as well after each one, and then it
cool. Yeah.
gives us an idea of how you put it in your story. So I'm gonna do what I always do.
Cool. Hi everybody. Okay, so again, I'm Adam Andrews Johnson, author of The Mantis Variant and The Mantis Equilibrium, and I'm going to read the drag scene because it involves a young character who's figuring himself out and a couple of fabulous drag queens, and yeah, just a good time. Let me back up and tell you. So the little boy is the boy that's joining and seeing this wonderful event. He's from a really isolated village. So this is his first time to the city. They realize that he's very gender fluid and has got a lot of queerness to him. So they're connecting him with the drag queens, which is wonderful and makes me so happy here. So Ninyani broke out with a beaming smile. Auntie Peg led him, the mystic, and T'Chama back out into the cold evening. The streets were still busy and bustled with people, and after only a moment, they left the Shifton neighborhood. Auntie Peg turned down a side street towards a large crowd that was gathered not far ahead. Almost there, she informed the others with a smile. She looked down at Ninyani. His eyes were wide and his mouth was agape with wonder. They're a fancy bunch, aren't they? Auntie Peg asked him. He looked up at her with amazement. The crowd ahead was exuberant. People were cheering and chanting and cackling with glee. A few people were indeed dancing right in the street. Music was coming out from one of the nearby buildings. Despite everything he was seeing, he could not take his eyes off the dancers. There were 3 of them in continuous movement, but their enthusiasm made others temporarily join in before the dancers moved on to other partners. They danced in ways Ninyani had never seen before. The 3 swerved and dipped and leapt through the air. They dropped and popped and bounced and bumped. The formulaic and ritualistic dancing in Frostflower, where he was from, seemed rigid compared to the fluid and free movements of the dancers. One of them approached a group of several men, and all of them suddenly began dancing as well. Ninyani burst out with a delighted laugh, but then he covered his face with one dainty hand and blushed at himself. The larger group danced only a few moments before they again returned to standing still. Ninyani's eyes lingered on them, even as the other dancers continued. The boy was suddenly taken aback by what he realized he was seeing. The costumes, oh, the costumes! Massive teased wigs donned people's heads, glittering gowns flowed from bodies, exaggerated makeup and gaudy jewelry decorated many of the gathered folks. Ninyani's eyes moved over the diverse variety of fashion. There were sequins and animal prints and ruffles. There was lace and leather and satin and silk. Gobsmacked, are we? Auntie Peg asked with a knowing and playful smirk. She paused at the edge of the crowd, took a compact out of her purse and opened it. Ninyani watched her check herself in the mirror. A face dusted to perfection, she proclaimed. Should we give you a little something? Without waiting for his reply, she offered, how about a little gloss for your lips, or maybe a touch of eyeshadow or blush? Ninyani looked confused. Auntie Peg smiled at him, and she grabbed the hand of someone in the crowd. A mustachioed individual turned, beamed at her with recognition, and exclaimed, Peggy! The person wrapped her in a tight hug. She laughed and replied, I'd like you to meet our new friend Ninyani. Auntie Peg released the embrace and turned towards the boy. He looked up at the other person. They were wearing a dress and lots of makeup. However, a large handlebar mustache also graced their upper lip. Wow, Ninyani whispered, and Auntie Peg's friend gave the child a toothy smile. You can call me, she said in a deep voice, Miss Cleopatra. She stroked her mustache. You're so pretty, Ninyani replied. Miss Cleopatra guffawed. I should hope so, she declared. Look at all the time and effort I put into me. And she struck a pose. Ninyani giggled, and for a moment, some of the people behind Miss Cleopatra applauded for her, and T'Chama joined in with them. I was just offering Ninyani some makeup, Auntie Peg commented to Miss Cleopatra. The mustachioed woman moved again, and the cheering died. She pulled an exaggerated look of surprise, then proclaimed, Of course he wants some makeup. Let's beat that mug until it's sickening. Do you have any spare sparkles? The boy should be dripping in eleganza. Auntie Peg knelt beside the boy and pointed up at Miss Cleopatra. Would you like some lipstick like her? Eyeshadow? Blush? She added. Ninyani's eyes glittered with delight. All he could do was nod yes. Thank you, Miss Cleopatra, Auntie Peg said. She gave them an elegant curtsy and turned back to the crowd. I'll go ahead and stop there because they're going to go inside and it's just going to get crazier and there's people dancing and it just goes over the top from there. And I talk about people's clothes and one of them gets drunk and it's just a good time. So there you go. Ta-da!
That was lovely.
Thank you.
I love the description that you gave of the drag queen Cleopatra. And how old is the girl?
14. Just turned 14. Yeah. And
I had a slightly younger girl in my head.
Oh, that's what I talk about. I read at the beginning of the book, the 14th birthday has come and gone, and the child is still very childish, very, very immature, and very youthful. So yeah, little kid. And
yeah, no, I don't know why I had in my head a much younger child.
No,
but but her reaction was really cute.
The people that I mentioned at the beginning that are being hunted all have to have been through puberty. So everybody's got to be at least 14, 15 at the youngest in my story. Those are basically the youngest kids that are being dealt with. And then everybody older than that. There's some child soldiers and all sorts of horrible things that have happened to kids. And then they retaliate and get their revenge. And that's sort of how my story goes. I just have everybody get killing people.
So do you have like a main protagonist, or is there multiple leads?
The first book starts with 3 main characters, and I tell their story, and then I add a 4th one. And here we go. Here goes the spoiler. One of them gets killed at the end of the first book, and that's sort of what helps unify people, and it leads to some confrontations in the second book. So yeah, basically 4 main characters, and then I weave in some other ones. Like the child Ninyani is awesome. I love that character, but book 2 starts with them, and then for a while the story doesn't revolve around him too much. There's a little bit of him telling his backstory and that sort of thing, but and him coming to terms with his queerness, and I love that because that's around the age that I was figuring out myself. So that's a cool thing to put into my book. So yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool. So in terms of like, I don't know, I think the character Cleopatra has quite a loud and flamboyant.
I think Auntie Peg is the drag queen that lives inside of me, and Miss Cleopatra and some of the other ones are drag queens that I have been friends with or idolize or whatever. And I put some other personalities into people and just gave them different names, kind of.
That's cool though, because our ideas come from things that have happened in real life, doesn't it? So and same as characters, there's only so much we can take from our own brain. Some of it has. Yeah,
I think our brains take ideas and then twist them and change them into something else, and I think that's what's so cool about creativity.
Definitely. So do you think that how do you get the dynamic between Auntie Peggy and, which is so weird because my very first nanny was called Auntie Peggy.
That's where I got the name. My very first nanny was named Auntie Peggy.
Oh, really?
That's where I took the name. Yep.
Maybe if your name is Peggy, that is what you actually are aspiring to grow up to become as a nanny and a drag queen.
That's what I'll be. That's what I'll be.
So the character of Auntie Peggy and the relationship that she has with Cleopatra. Love the name, by the way. How does that? What's going on between those two characters? Because that's quite interesting.
Okay, so book one starts in an isolated cult where there's a horrible child sacrifice ceremony, and it turns out later at the end of book one, Auntie Peg also grew up in this cult and she escaped and she left the cult. She was living as a boy. She's not transgender. She's a drag queen. I distinguish that in the stories also, but she escaped. And so when she got to the city, she connected with these drag queens and they helped her realize who she was inside. And she lets that out now as Auntie Peg. I even give you her real name at the end of the book as a boy, and she takes off all her makeup. She's like, "Oh my God, it's so basic in the mirror right now. Oh, I hate it so much." It's just a great moment of her being a guy after her drag. And so she's important. These drag queens were important to her, and there's a really tight-knit community. The traditional drag ball scene in New York was not just men in dresses like we think of drag now. It was a lot of transgender people who were experimenting with their queerness, and so that's what I wanted to reflect. It's not so much drag today, but drag what I think the future of drag will be like, where anybody can take part in it. Anybody, no matter who they are, can participate in the performance art of drag, and that's what I was trying to show there. So yeah, just a celebration.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I like.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Okay.
Should we get another reader? Should we move on? Somebody else to read?
Xander, would you like to have a go read?
Yes, sure. Let's. I'll do it. So, right. What do I do?
So we'll pop you on the screen just like me. Introduce yourself again. Remind us the name of your book that you're about to read from, and where it is or will be available, and then just read until you're done, and we'll pop back on the screen when you finish. Okay?
All right. Sounds great.
Wonderful.
So, hi. My name is Xander Faines. My pronouns are they, them. Well, you all know this. I'm a writer, and I'm also an artist. I don't have too much out right now. All I have is a small short story out on Kindle on Amazon. It's an ebook. It's short. It's only like 99 cents on Kindle. But that's not what I will be reading today. What I will be reading today is a novella that I've been working on for quite some time, actually, and it means so much to me. And it's not yet available. It's right now currently in editing. So I'll let everybody know when it's ready to and up for pre-order and purchase and everything. You can follow me on my socials at MixFains. Here, I'll write it down in chat. Maybe we can pop it up. So I'll be reading a small excerpt from that novella. So here I go. And also, if we can put the book cover image, that'd be lovely. I've been so excited to show it to everyone. But the Book Slam Extra gets it a bit early because you all are so special. Everybody else is just going to have to wait until I release it at the end of the month. So here I go with reading, I suppose. I'm going to read part of chapter 3 called Insight. March, 7 months before the ceremony. I continued taking the formula, 11 centiliters, 3 times a day. The transient symptoms of a slight euphoria became more pronounced every day for 3 weeks. I started to feel a warm tug in my chest. According to the theory, this tug was my soul responding to the formula. I soon started to differentiate more desires. I started to pay more attention to sounds. My voice was alto, like the sound a pen makes against paper. Oasis's voice was like the cling of Erlenmeyer flasks, low and harmonious. Oasis and I returned from our teaching at the university on Wednesday, and after a brief meal, we resumed our work on the formula. We were mastering it, slowly. 10 minutes after the dose, I was already feeling the warm tug. We left the lab together, and I suddenly had an unrelenting urge to listen to jazz. I tapped my lap as I hopped my way upstairs. Oh, and there's the cover reveal. It's gorgeous. I don't know. What do you all think? Let me know. Anyways, I heard Oasis laugh as she tried to catch up. Someone's happy. I turned to face her at the top of the stairs. My soul's happy. Where's the radio? I ran to our guest room. Elliot, wait! Her voice echoed as she hurried after me. I have to record the changes you're feeling after this dose. She reached the guest room by the time I had cleared away the chairs and turned on the radio. Jazz was on. Salvation. We'll be ready for the ceremony in no time, I said. Let's take it slow, Elliot. She approached with a small grin as I started to dance with the melody. We don't exactly know where any of this is going. Come on, Oasis. Let's celebrate a little. I held her hands and dragged her with me to our makeshift dance floor. We deserve to celebrate. She smiled with her eyes, but I read tension in her every feature. I gave her hand a small tug, and she set her journal down, took off her shoes, and joined me. I felt raw, new, like I was blooming. I had hopes for our Institute of Physology for once in a long 8 years, and no doubt Oasis had her hopes as well. I felt as though the sun spread through my every vein and nerve. The fierce joy crescendoed in my head, and I felt dizzy, but I continued moving. My feet moved fast, my focus impeccable. I haven't felt like this in my life, ever. Oasis and I cupped hands and we danced, our laughter filling the room. We moved and turned, and I faced the mirror adjacent to the fireplace above the radio. The image in the mirror grinned. Then, with a wink, Elliot in the mirror said, "Hey there, pretty boy." I screamed and stumbled back, pulling Oasis with me. She caught her footing and scrambled to me. Did you see that? I felt for my glasses on the ground. I put them on and looked to the clock. 30 minutes after my third dose. I said in her direction. She was already scribbling notes. Elliot in the mirror was standing, clasping his hands behind his back. My body felt warm, but it dissipated moments before he appeared. I pointed to the mirror. My reflection didn't point back. He just looked at me like I was an idiot as I clambered to my feet. He has a name, by the way, Elliot in the mirror smiled. The name's Fitz. Fitz? Oasis glanced at me, nervousness in her eyes. Yeah, that was my name, right, Elliot? Fitz said, his voice icy, his gaze fiery. That name. It struck a chord in me that I thought I had long buried and left frazzled and dry enough to disappear. But that chord wasn't dry enough. It strung again when I looked to my reflection and turned every sensation in my body tight, suffocating, frigid. Before Runeberg, before Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Utterson, before Oasis, before my education and present life, there was that name, Fitz Garrison, son of Frigga and Cedric Garrison. I had long buried that impoverished, downtrodden, miserable name. When I arrived in Runeberg and met the good doctor and his husband, my name became Elliot Warlow. Only Oasis knew that part of me. But what she knew was a fragment of what Fitz in the mirror knew and lived. Constricted tears filled my chest, but instead I chuckled, I turned to Oasis. So the formula worked. Damn right it's working, Fitz clapped once. Oasis cupped her mouth. This is shifting. You shifted. I turned to face Fitz. In that moment, I caught another fragment of him, of myself in the mirror, that I had also long buried. Innocence. Your eye color's red, I said. Oasis came closer to the mirror and looked to him, then to me. My eyes were a halogen green. Fitz's eyes were a metallic red. I saw Oasis' reflection in the mirror, a triumphant smile across her cheeks. Her reflection next to Fitz felt strange, so very strange. Oasis knew Elliot, and she knew little about Fitz, and I had intended to let no one know about him. For so long I even hid him from myself. Yet there he was, standing next to Oasis, facing me. The image of a young lad who once had dreams, love, fight, and loss, all grown up into a chemical psychologist. Her voice brought me back to the present moment. Perhaps this is a manifestation of your soul? My soul is red? I asked stupidly. She snickered. Why would the formula do that? Beats the hell out of me, Fitz said. But you made it. I shifted. So we might gain the council members' interest in the ceremony after all, I said. I frowned and came to explain what the ceremony and what this entire ordeal is about, but Fitz interrupted. I know all that, he waved me off. I know you're revisiting Henry's formula. I know you're attending the ceremony to bring this institute independence and continue your work with lysology. He nodded with us with a small, somber smile. I know everything. Something about his words pained me. I know everything. The words lingered in my mind for far too long. He knew everything. Everything from Dad to the factories, from the drinking to my early passions and their destruction. Everything from why I escaped home to my acquaintance with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Utterson, to my brewing love for Oasis that simmered 3 years ago and began to slowly bubble. Everything, including my insecurities and dreads and dreams. And it scared me. But I had not the guts nor strength to admit that at the time. That is what felled me in the hopes for this entire institute. Oasis sank down on the couch next to the fireplace. She whistled. What a relief. Tell me about what you see, what you feel. We want to know everything. Well, Fitz dropped both of his arms to his thighs. I can see the room and you, he pointed. He turned his gaze to the portrait above the fireplace, not to his right, but to the outside of the mirror where Oasis and I stood. I can see Henry and John's portrait. He smiled while he looked to them. He blinked exactly the same way I do when I look to them, a blink of reverence and longing. I can see the room around me, but inverted. He gazed around. It feels like the room exists and doesn't. Fitz put his hands in his pockets and bobbed his head left and right. My peripheries are a little dark, hazy. I'm not even sure there's anything beyond the room that Elliot's in. I can see, hear, smell, taste, feel anything that Elliot can. So strange to see myself in the mirror act independently. To look at myself in the eyes, in his eyes, and have both of us be doing something completely different. One smiling, the other frowning, one's hands in his pockets, the other clasped together. I sat down slowly next to Oasis. Are you all right? She leaned to me. Yes, I'm fine, I said, just taking it all in. Well, Fitz said, so long as there's no vomiting, fever, delirium, and no movement between either realms of the mirror, the ceremony will go great. And I suppose that's where I will stop reading. Sorry to leave you all on a bit of a weird last line, but yeah, that's all I have.
No, that was great.
That was good.
I totally got the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing. Oh, Jules, you're muted. You're muted.
No, I was just saying I'm sorry because I I was trying to get it so that we could see you and your book cover at the same time, and it didn't work.
It's all right. I mean, you saw me, you heard me, you also saw the book
And
cover.
the
It all
book
worked
cover
out in
looks
the end.
gorgeous. Yep.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
beautiful.
much for sharing it.
I'm
And
gonna
I totally get the
share it
Dr.
again.
Jekyll, Mr.
Is that
Hyde
right?
thing going on. Yeah,
second.
totally get
There we
that
go.
back and forth vibe. Ooh, there it is again. Look at that.
Oh, it's lovely. I'm so proud of it, honestly.
Did you make it yourself?
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
I made it from like Canva, but I also kind of edited and drew the like the mirror cracks and did the lettering and typesetting myself.
Nice.
So the image was available through Canva,
Yeah.
and I kind of, pizzazz it up myself.
Yeah. I
I'm
love
so proud of
the
it.
doppelganger reflection that's backwards. That's clever.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, thank you for noticing. I was trying to kind of give it an inverted look as well.
Clever. Nope, I love it. I think it's brilliant. Very
The
good cover.
crack at the top, yeah, and the crack at the top looks almost like someone's got their eyes covered and it's the bottom of their face and they're in a screen. It's probably just the cracks, but that's what it looks like.
Oh my God, I'm so happy you noticed. I mean, see, the thing is, I wanted to commission an artist to work on the cover to have Elliot's face kind of split between Fitz and Elliot. But book cover design is expensive, so I had to make the cover myself. But yeah, I mean, I had the imagery in mind, the vision in mind of a shattered, broken mirror. And yeah, I mean, I hope it, I think it's doing its job.
It's
I really
great.
like
Yep. Great cover. Great cover. Yep.
it. Really good. Yeah.
Thank you
All right.
so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for reading. So you've obviously used the characters. Oh, I'm saying for the most part, because I don't know if you've used every single character from Jekyll and Hyde. But what made you choose that book?
Jekyll and Hyde specifically?
Yeah.
Well, when I was a little lad, just kidding. When I was younger, I read Jekyll and Hyde, and sometimes we read something or come across something, and it completely becomes a huge obsession. I don't know why. I don't know how this happens, but I became obsessed. But there are a lot of retellings of Jekyll and Hyde, and they're all absolutely wonderful. But I also kind of wanted to use the story and the premise of Jekyll and Hyde, but kind of give it a different flavor, I suppose, a very, very Xander flavor. So I had the idea of the characters of Elliot and Fitz for an oasis for a long while, and I really enjoyed writing not the duality so much as the multi-layered conflict we have with ourselves. So this story, Doppelganger, is kind of I suppose it's kind of a metaphor, a more exaggerated metaphor of the conflict that we tend to have with the mirror. And there's a lot of the story has a lot of mirrors, so many mirrors, and I used Dr. Jekyll's formula, and I even gave it a name. It wasn't really named in the story. I gave it a really fancy name called Ego Veritas. Ego means self, Veritas means truth in Latin. It's real fancy. I'm so proud of it. Yeah, so I kind of wanted to develop it beyond Jekyll and Hyde, and it's a story on the dynamics in the story. This past draft, I did so much work and kind of scrapped a lot of things and reworked a couple of things too. really get to the heart of the character dynamics. I felt like there was in earlier drafts, it was very disconnected and scattered, and the dynamics weren't really there. Like I was trying to get to them, but they weren't really sticking. With this draft, I'm so incredibly grateful. I'm so proud of it. I feel like I have really managed to kind of crack open the dynamic between Elliot and Fitz himself, but also Elliot and Oasis, and also another character who is the antagonist. And it's also a story on autonomy, self-forgiveness, love, but also on addiction and I guess self-dishonesty, and the balance between what we want for ourselves versus what we need for ourselves. And I thought, using the Dr. Jekyll's formula in a more advanced kind of way, to imagine it in a more... I imagined, what if Dr. Jekyll survived? What if Utterson saved him at the end, and they get married, and oh my god, I made them gay because I want to, and then Oasis is their daughter. And I introduced Elliot into the story as a way to kind of explore this dynamic with himself, with the mirror, through Dr. Jekyll's formula. If I had to give an elevator pitch for the story, is researcher meddles with Dr. Jekyll's formula, uncovers past trauma. That's the elevator pitch. Yeah, and they all take... the dynamic between them develops in a way where everybody is lying to themselves and everybody is lying to each other. I don't want to spoil too much, but Oasis also takes a decision that ends up hurting Elliot. She takes a decision, to protect Elliot and to protect the institute that they both are directing and running, and barely able to grow in the fictional city that I made up. And she takes a decision that ends up hurting Elliot. And in a way that kind of sort of disrupts the dynamic and the trust between the two, between Elliot and Oasis. And we follow Elliot and Fitz's internal conflict after that, after his trust was broken. His trust with Oasis and his trust with himself. Yeah, I don't know. What else?
Oh, no, that's great. That's a lot. That's a lot of information about your story. Real quick, before we jump over to Bright Halo and Heather, is that the Raven on a poster behind you, completely printed out? The Edgar Allan Poe?
Oh yeah, I got it on a poster sale. It's got a bunch of quotes from Edgar Allan Poe and others, the Raven, but he's a very nice goth icon.
Yeah. I noticed that as well. I actually have a raven bird that I bought for Halloween 5 years ago, but it's in my space all the time, all year round.
It's not just a decoration for Halloween.
Right,
it's
exactly.
Not a Halloween thing.
Yeah,
I love it. It's wonderful.
I'm a huge fan of Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, I'm glad you noticed that.
Well, Heather, would you like to read some from your book now?
I have decided not to do a reading today for various reasons. We talked about that, but I am happy to talk about, just briefly, this is the cover, Magic and Whiskers.
Oh, hang on.
We can pop it up on the screen for you. We could pop it up.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that'd be great too. I have a cat right here is with me as well who decided to join. So yeah, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, Magic and Whiskers is kind of it's not a children's story at all, even though the cover may look like it. It is a battle of good and evil. It's a love story. It's a battle. It is, some readers have mentioned religion, but it's really not. It's more about gods, goddesses, and how you view that, and how you act based on kind of who you're influenced by, I guess. I wouldn't put religion into that category, at least from my perspective. Yeah, and so this is book one. For me, we're talking about character development. I kind of knew how I wanted it to end, and I'll give a spoiler for those who have not read it yet. One of the characters does die. Adam, you gave that spoiler, so I'll give the same one. But cats have 9 lives, and so who knows what happens in between those lives. We dive into that a little bit at the end of this, and then of course, when I got to that point, I realized there has to be a story 2 and then a story 3. And so it kind of took off from there. And I loved it. I read it again, after you do that initial drafts, and I actually cried at the end. Like, what is happening? Like, this has not happened in forever. So I was really excited about that. It's sometimes you get too close to a story that you don't see kind of errors or mistakes that other people will see, or plot holes. Yeah. So, having other people give feedback that I needed to fill those in really helped to keep the story together, especially the characters and how they were acting, or how they were speaking to each other, interacting with each other. So that was really helpful, because I have it all in my head, right? At least most of the time, I know what's supposed to happen, where they are. But to get that out there so that somebody else understands is difficult. And of course, I'm not a cat. So, that added to, for me and my creativity, that added another layer of a little bit of difficulty. So, yeah, so far people have read it and they've loved it. I hope more people read it and, look at their cats a little bit differently, perhaps. So.
Well, and I love what you just said about your process, because we've talked about it on the show many times, how isolating and how lonely the process of writing can be. And so to have people that actually read your work as you're working on it and give you feedback while you're in the process is amazing.
It's invaluable. It's invaluable. Like for a while, I didn't even have my cat. I had the apartment, and it's a place that I used to live. Like that's in my head, the layout, of course, but I'm not explaining, like where they are in comparison to some other, another cat or one of the keepers. So it was really good to have that perspective. It was
the head,
I know
the story that you've got in your head when somebody else says, but what happened to the other? Oh yeah, no,
right.
I know where it is, but I didn't write that down.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. So the input of beta readers, my editor, is just, invaluable. It wouldn't be what it is without them, for sure.
Amazing. Well, Jules mentioned the Discord that she hosts for authors. I sent each of you the invite to be part of that if you want to. It's just for authors and beta readers and people involved in.
Oh, cool.
It's very small right now, but it's growing. So
great.
I sent you both all of the 3 of you have the link. So we'd love for you to be part of that also. And I've gotten a beta reader on there at least once before. I think a few of us have. Yeah. So. Cool. Well,
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Bright Halo, would you like to read? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
It's all right.
Bright Halo, honey, wait! Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, all the chapters are so good. I'm scared now. I don't know which one to want to read.
That's all right. I messed up earlier, so don't worry about it.
The Tower Prince, I still need to re-edit before I release it in May. So I don't know if I should read my favorite chapter from my debut.
Do that, yeah, of course.
Okay.
I think I've got your front cover, but for the other one, the lady with the blue dress on it.
Yeah, is it? I think it's upcoming book that's coming out in July. Is episode 6.
Okay.
That's the one that I've got. So, can I show that or?
Yeah, that's my book reveal for the upcoming one.
Yay!
I'll do that when you are actually doing some reading. I'll put it
okay.
Sorry.
Sorry. Well, go ahead.
Okay.
So I haven't worked out how to do it, so I've got the person side by side. I am.
We'll figure that out next time. Yeah. No, so same as before. Bright Haley will pop you on the screen by yourself. Introduce yourself again. Tell us where we can get your book again, and then read. However long feels good.
Is it a bad idea to read chapter 10? It's my favorite one, but it's
okay. Maybe give us a little backstory. Tell us what leads up to it. Give us some important.
Oh, so much happened. You kind of get some context while I'm reading it.
Okay. We trust you. We trust you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so on Bright Halo book, basically, I studied creative writing and drama. I'm an undergrad. I did a master's in creative writing. I'm a teaching assistant, and I'm planning to learn to become an English teacher from September, so go back to uni. This is my first book. I finally released it after 12 years. So I'm going to read my favorite chapter. It's called Messy Masterpiece. Okay, chapter 10. She was a woman from my nightmare and dreams, with her black wavy hair and intense purple eyes. She had a white background and a wide grin. Even though she never smiled once, I had to paint an idyllic ending for her. She was a character of my imagination, but she felt so real to me. I drew her, I painted her, I created her. Leo stared at my painting in art class and grinned. Amazing, Crystal. You finished it on time. What inspired you? I held my hips. Thank you, but it's none of your business. The past week was confusing enough, and I didn't need him judging me. I was inspired by such a dark dream, but the portrait brought me peace. Leo put his hand on his chin. There's something you should know. I sat on my stool. This better be worth it. Go ahead. The woman you painted is your mother. That's not funny. He shook his head. I'm not trying to be. It's complicated, and let me try to explain. Milena is your mother, but this image is her true form. She's an angel from another world. Are you serious? I thought I was the insane one. Please stop. I'm telling the whole truth to you, I swear, and I'll prove it. He had lost his mind and he needed a reality check. My mom was a normal human with flaws. Quit wasting my time, I said. Tell your story to someone else. But you can learn the truth by your mother, and the intruder inflicted that mark, he replied. I stared at the back of my hand. The dark scar had faded over the year, but the memory of the house fire hadn't. Of course, I was dying to understand my mother and her motives and get revenge on the masked man. I had been searching for the truth, but Leo's remarks sounded fictional. Our art teacher, Miss Elson, patrolled the classroom, and Leo walked back to his seat across the room. I didn't have time to process what he was saying, so I had to ignore his words and act normally. I slipped off my chair and stood next to my painting. Miss Elson approached me and viewed my project. Crystal, this piece is so full of emotion and creativity. Your talent shines through every stroke. I can see how intensely you have worked. Well done. Thank you, I said, trying not to smirk. I wanted to run to the rooftop, dance and shout. I'd finished the work and Kelly didn't ruin it. Things were getting better. No problem. Keep up the splendid job, Miss Elson replied, scribbling on her clipboard and moving on to the next student. I caught Leo staring at me, and 1 second later, he was standing right beside me. We don't belong in this world, and we must return home, he whispered. I took a step back from him. Please stop. You're freaking me out. The whole classroom stood still, and the students and Miss Elson froze on the spot. I checked my watch to see he had also stopped. What the hell? Did you just pause time? I asked, paralyzed in fear. Who are you? Leo lifted his hands, and all the paint brushes flew into the air, blasting paint all over the classroom. Do you believe me now? I closed my eyes instinctively as wet paint splattered all over my body. What are you doing? Please stop, I screamed. The paint in my mouth was sour. I wiped my face and opened my eyes. Thick colour consumed the entire room, and everyone looked like human rainbows. I couldn't deny magic when I was staring right at it. Leo had no paint on him. Please tell me you believe me. I'm trying to help you, but you didn't take me seriously. You have been on Earth for too long. If you have this power, why didn't you use it to save my mother and stop her killer that night? I screamed. Instead of using it to scare me now. Well, I couldn't use it back then. It's complicated. You keep saying that. Pretty convenient, huh? It was you who helped the master man. Tell me the truth once and for all. We've already been through this. I don't know who he is, and I came there that night to save you and your mother. Liar. Then why did you carry a briefcase with all that money that night? I just borrowed money from a friend. What kind of friend would give you that much cash? You told me you came from a rich family member. Are you forgetting all your lies? Stop with all the questions. You're missing the main point of the conversation, Crystal. We need to go home. I ain't going anywhere with you. Leave me alone. You never listen, Leo said, waving his hands. A pile of chalk and drawing pencils rolled onto the floor. The ruined paintings jumped off the easels and floated into the air. There was a darkness in Leo's eyes, and he aimed the paintings at me. I was stupid for even trying to communicate it was a supernatural lunatic. Promise me you'll follow my instructions, he continued. I wanted to punch him, but he could have thrown me across the room with his powers. Yes, I promise. Just stop this already. In a blink, the classroom was back to normal. The paintings were untouched and the walls were crisp white. The students were chatting and laughing again. On my final art piece was bold red handwriting that read, "Meet me tomorrow, 6 a.m. at Ballsworth Park." Then the writing disappeared right before my eyes. Why would Leah want to meet me at the park so early? What was he planning to do? Miss Elson stood behind her desk. Class is dismissed. Have a wonderful day and well done, class. The class was over before it began. An entire hour had passed in 15 minutes. Could Leo manipulate time and stop it? Was he even human? He had vanished and I wasn't sure what to think. Was he intending to hurt me if I didn't follow instructions? There was two things I knew for certain. He wasn't someone to mess with, and he definitely wasn't from this world. Okay.
Yay!
I'm literally just about to put your cover up on the screen.
Let's get
Hang on.
So
There we go.
This is the new one, the next episode.
Yeah,
Yay.
yeah. That's coming out on the 25th of July. All my books are on Amazon.
Excellent.
Very nice.
And the when you got into the dialogue back and forth, you were putting on character voices. Oh, that was great. That was amazing. That was fabulous.
Thanks. I couldn't help it. I just get into character not to read it.
Get all dramatic.
That was great.
I gotta say, your dialogue is so brilliant, and it's you waste no words. It's very concise and it's to the point. I really enjoyed the dialogue between them, and the description was phenomenal. I could just envision it kind of before me. It was marvelous.
Yeah, I like to keep my most of my books are quite dialogue heavy, but it's still got quite a lot of action, and the way I describe stuff, it's very colorful and kind of in your face, and there's a lot of drama and there's a lot of silliness, but it's still kind of deep. You kind of get to know the character and you get to understand her, but like loads of things are just crazy.
I'm so invested in the characters and I don't even know anything about them, and this is chapter 10 and I want to know about Leo. I want to know about Crystal. It's wonderful.
How much magic has she experienced by this point in the story?
That was her first experience. That's why she's like, what the hell is going on?
Okay. But is she does she think magic exists, or is this like a aha moment for her?
Yeah, that was the first time she's like, what's going on here?
Wild. Okay, that's amazing. Yeah. And her mother's an angel from another world? Was that something you said? When I spoke to you on Twitter, I mentioned that I had to keep the prologue because it kind of describes the origin of the story of the mother. Like, okay, I was going to spoil it. So basically, the prologue is the mother sending her baby off, like in a bubble to Earth, because she's like trying to save her from the king who's trying to kill all of them, basically. So, awesome. And then so it's kind of confusing, but when you actually finish the book, you're still a little bit confused. That's where you meant to be the next one. Does the realm that they're from have a different name?
Yeah, it's called I should actually know this without looking.
We write stuff down so we don't have to remember all the details.
It's called the Kingdom of Enchantia Divine.
Ooh.
Yeah, but the king is so evil in it. Like, you don't get to meet the king until second episode, but like each episode is madness. If that new one, that episode 6, that's completely just a different. It's just different. It don't make any sense. But if you don't read it in order, you won't understand.
Who's your favorite character to write?
Oh, go ahead.
Who's your favorite character to write?
Yeah, it has to be Crystal. Crystal and Leo, their romance is like so sweet. It's like a slow burn, so it like takes its time. Like they're just like friends, and she's like the way she talks to him and the way he like talks to her. They're like very kind of sassy and like she's like, "Oh, just leave me alone." And he's like, I don't know. It's just so cute, like the way they are together.
Oh, I love that. That's great. And how often are you releasing these episodes? Because you're on number 6 now. How often do you get through them?
Basically, the first 4 I was writing like since I was 16. I kept rewriting it over and over again to make it perfect. So that's like 12 years.
Wow.
But obviously going to university and stuff, and they give you like the confidence. Like one of the modules was like actually publishing your own book. So they actually got taught how to like create their own book covers and how to do everything from start to finish. So after I'd done that and I finished uni, I was like, okay, I'm going to publish it now. Don't waste more time. It's already been 12 years. So, so I just like had to put myself out there.
That's
so
awesome.
Here we go.
Awesome.
And it's worth it.
It's a scary part, isn't it? When you finish your manuscript and you're publishing it, regardless of whether you're publishing it through a publishing company or whether you're publishing it self-published or whatever way you're doing it, it's scary because in your book is personal stuff that you've experienced, stuff that you've heard, felt, seen, done. And although it might be embedded in this whole realm of fantasy or science fiction or romance or whatever, it's still there.
It's very revealing. Yeah.
It is very revealing. It's quite a vulnerable period, I think, in an author's kind of journey when their work suddenly gets released to the public. And I mean, I know people who've written some stuff in their books, and it's to do with really deeply personal stuff, but it's coated in this fiction world, and you would literally have no clue what the relationship was between what was going on in the book and the person. But it's still quite a difficult time, isn't it? It's a very vulnerable period, I think.
I think it's very cathartic for writers to get out stuff like that, issues, traumas, frustrations that we've gone through, situations that we made a bad decision in, or somebody else made a bad decision. We wish that the decision had been made different, so we write something different in our story. Yeah. I think it can be very. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think when I wrote this, like Leo was like my dream guy, so just like I was basically Crystal, and I was just like trying to create my own like little world.
Yes.
Like so it worked out.
He's quite dreamy, if you ask me.
Yeah.
He's really dreamy.
There's only one chapter.
He's my dream guy.
If you read all the episodes, you're gonna fall in love with him. Like it just gets better and better and better. He makes Crystal better as well. That's what I find so sweet.
That's a good dynamic. That's awesome.
That's how it's supposed to be. Do you want me to do a bit?
Yeah. Would you want to read a little, Jules?
Yeah, can do. I know the drill now. I'm actually going to put myself on the big screen for once.
You can do it. All right.
Which is what I've not been doing before. All right. Okay. So, hi, I'm Jules. I am the host, but I also dabble in writing. This is a segment from my book of Shadow and Swords. And it's for a little bit of background. So Ray she's joined this group called the Circle, which is made up of the top commanders, their seconds, and also some fantasy creatures and spiritual animals and things. And she joined them without actually consulting Raven, who Leo's Xander's dreamboat, but Raven's mine. I think Raven's lovely. But he's unhappy with her for doing this. And the commanders send her on this mission. It's her first ever mission that she's leading on. And it goes horribly wrong. Completely wrong. And this is kind of like after she's lost some people and she's now having to scramble back what she can and somehow get the rest of them home safe. You've got to also bear in mind she's only 17 as well, so her decision-making skills aren't great. Okay. Do you want to say a few words, Kez? You knew them best. I laid a gentle hand on her upper arm as she stared at the flames as they engulfed Jade and Sione. The sun had already set, and it had taken us the entire day to build the pyres and then carry both bodies out, mainly due to Kez's leg making walking difficult, and both were so heavy. However, once they were ready to be placed atop the pyre, Kez and I checked to see if either had anything we could use on them that would help us survive. Jade had a map, water and some food, and Sony had nothing but her weapon. It was like they knew this trip wasn't going to be a long one. Why would she have nothing on her? It made no sense. Kez took Sony's weapon, and I placed Jade's things in my bag. Kez cleared her throat and nodded. Jade, well, you always were a pain in the ass, and you irritated me most of the time. But I wish I could have saved you. You were like a little brother to me. I'll miss you. I wish I hadn't been a coward and run off. The words caught me off guard. Coward? Kez had her faults, but being a coward was not one I'd associate with her. But one chased us out of the cave, and I didn't know what to do. I panicked. I'm so sorry. She let out a quiet sob, wiped her eyes, and then gazed at where Sione lay next to Jade. His hands shook. Sione, Glass would have been proud to see how you fought. I will tell him how brave you were. We gathered some twigs from surrounding bushes with berries and threw them into the fire, flaring for a second and then sizzling as they burned. Then in silence, both numb from the physical and emotional exhaustion of the day, in the mouth of the cave, observing how the flames engulfed the bodies that rested upon the pyre 100 feet ahead. The intense heat warmed our cheeks. The distant crack and snap of someone stepping on twigs from somewhere nearby cut through the silence. We looked at each other, and Kez put a finger on her mouth to urge me to be quiet. I nodded in return, and we both stared in the direction from where the noise came. Kez unsheathed her sword, though remained seated, and I readied my bow, crouching at the entrance and aimed at where I thought the sound had come from. More noise that sounded like footsteps crunching through the leaves. My heart thudded in my chest, and I held my breath. Who or what was it? Friend, foe, or beast? Gods! I exclaimed as Raven and Willa collapsed from the bushes. I raced over to them, helping them to their feet. A sticky substance covered my hands and arms. Blood, and lots of it. I tried to help him. Willa's voice was shaky. I didn't know what else to do. I saw smoke and... He's fine. He did the right thing. My stomach twisted into a knot. I couldn't lose him too. Willa and I managed to maneuver Raven to the entrance, where we helped him to lie down. He groaned but was unresponsive. Whose blood is this? His. Willa peered down at himself as if noticing the red stains for the first time. What happened? I asked him as I searched Raven's body for the injury, a large pool of congealed blood on his chest. I tugged away his clothes from the wound with as much care as possible, and the long silent slice swept across his stomach. Shit, Willa, what happened? Kez was staring at them both with wide eyes. We ran, and then it was gone, and then a hunter, but they hunted us. He was pale, with dark circles around his eyes. He hadn't slept. They hunted you? I asked, as I used the last of the vinegar wraps to clean the wound, and then gave needle and some fibres to suture the wound closed. Crude, but it would keep it clean and help it heal faster. Yeah, he wounded Raven, and I managed to knock him out and get Raven away. Been travelling all night, got lost, and it wasn't until I saw smoke that I knew someone might be able to help. Did they follow you? We could be in danger. Kez frowned at him as she dug around my bag to get some herbs out to help Raven. Kez handed me a bag with butter paste made with ginger, garlic, and garlic root and clove, wrinkling her nose in disgust at the smell, which I used to spread a thin layer over the injury. I don't use them for the smell. These will stop it from getting infected. Once I finished the ointment, I looked around for some material I could use to dress it. I didn't think, Willa shrugged as he looked at Kez. I was trying to save him. Anyway, as the commander here has told us to stay in the cave, when I realised we were heading this way, I knew this was the place to be. He gave me a grim smile and dipped his head. Look, I rested on my knees and regarded them both. You and I, Willa, can keep watch tonight. And we'll head off at first light tomorrow, okay? The mission failed. As the commander, I will accept full responsibility, all right? They looked at each other and then looked at me. We were ambushed, Ray. It was wrong from the start. We were never meant to succeed. Willa sat with his back against the rock face, his sword resting on my legs. We were sent to the wrong tunnel to begin with, and that hunter was not there by chance. If this was your fault, Ray, what decisions did you make that made it fail? Hez gave a gentle shrug of her shoulders. Well, I frowned as I replayed everything in my head. I left you alone. So, she shifted her leg to a more comfortable position. You leave your squad, all of whom are trained soldiers, alone so you can scout ahead as someone who is not trained and can see in the dark. That's not a wrong decision, Ray. That was a tactical decision that should have worked. Go on, what else? I don't know, was all I could say. I didn't know. But despite that, the heaviness was back on my chest again. The circle won't exile you for doing right by your team, but they will if you betray anyone in the circle. The mission might have failed, but not because of your decisions. Do you understand? Her face had softened to a smile, though her brow remained tense as she struggled to manage her pain. Her reassurance boosted my low mood, and I nodded with assertiveness. Right, Willa, did you want to say a few words for Sony and Jane? What? His eyes closed, and the word was more of a mumble than anything else. Don't worry. Sleep. Kez and I will keep watch. As I said the words, his eyes closed, and his head dropped to the side as he fell into a deep sleep with a gentle snore. My eyes were heavy, but an uneasy sensation prickled up my back and neck. Was we alone? Looking at Kez, it was clear she'd also been alerted to whatever was out there. But nothing moved nor stirred, just complete, eerie silence. My heightened senses woke me from the tiredness, so I stoked the fire I'd built that rested at the mouth of the cave. Keeping my bow in my hand, ready to fire at any moment, from the corner of my eye, Kez grasped the hilt of her sword in a tight grip, laying it on the ground next to her, not letting go. Our eyes met, and with a tiny lift of the corner of her lips, she nodded at me. We finally understood one another. I'm going to bring Ron back. Wakey.
That was great. Thank you.
That was a good place to stop, I think. All right. So, should we talk about character dynamics then? Because we've now listened to our stories. Does anyone want to add anything to any of it? Talk about characters in the books.
I do want to mention
Go for it.
that Jules, the character dynamics in your reading, I could sense how so young the characters are, and they sound like they bear a heavy burden. And it was a good reading. It was kind of like I felt so drawn. Also felt bad for those kids. That there's. I mean, I remember you mentioned that she's young. Ray is still young, and the character dynamics between them felt so tense, and there was a huge power dynamic that made me feel so. I just felt bad for Ray.
Yeah, Ray is feeling so down. Yeah, no, I felt the same thing. Yep.
Yeah.
She's not in a great
was a good read. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you.
I'm impressed by the amount of dialogue that you all seem to do. I am horrible at notating it and punctuating it, so I have a habit of avoiding it. So well done to all of you. It sounds amazing.
I felt the same way for a long time. The 600-page gigantic novel has a huge amount of description and way less dialogue.
Yeah.
Way less dialogue. It's so much about the characters and what they're feeling and stuff that a fraction of the amount of talking in that book than there is compared to the other book. Yeah, I was totally with you on that. I feel that.
It's funny because I tend to use a lot of dialogue, and I like dialogue and stories is it's supposed to sound like real life, but it's not real life dialogue, and I tend to kind of write through a lot of like extra, like I'm sorry, but like I have to write through a lot of junk before I like cut it out and then get to the good stuff, you know?
Yep.
And I also feel like I tend to especially when we're talking about character dynamics, I use dialogue as a crutch sometimes to kind of get the character dynamics between the characters mostly, to get it going. But I also struggle with, in terms of character dynamics, sometimes I struggle with characters sounding, even if it's not through dialogue, even if it's through body language or whatever, the characters sometimes tend to sound too alike, and I have a hard time teasing them out. And I think to myself, like, should I omit this character? Should I remove, or should I rework this character, or whatever?
Do you have a process that helps you? Do you write down the characters' specific personalities in like note form to refer back to, or anything like that? Or
so, oh lordy, oh
I felt that. I felt that right there.
No, you're right though, Adam. No, the thing is, I recently only had like a way to differentiate characters. I didn't used to do that. Now I do. And the reason I said, oh lordy, is because I realized just how useful those tools that I've been using. And one really fun tool is to have, I use Excel sheets a lot. So I have like a line or some sort of dialogue, or that's supposed to sound very casual, like a character talking about what they do in the morning. And for each character, I write it in the way that they would say it, or the way that they would think it.
Cool.
So Elliot will say it differently than, will talk about his morning differently than Oasis, differently than the antagonist, differently than, Fitz.
Yeah.
So that's one way that
That
helps me kind of differentiate the characters. Another way is to maybe, what would the character do if, for example, they come across like a wallet on the ground in public? that might help like differentiate character, sense of morality or something. But if you have any other suggestions and exercises, please let me know, because I struggle sometimes with differentiating characters.
Well, I think it goes back to what we were saying before, that we put so much of ourselves into our stories sometimes, that I think it takes that process. Like, I love to think of my first draft or whatever I'm working on, however I'm working on it, as a puzzle that then needs to be solved with editing and cutting and whatever. I think that what you said before, that writing out as much as possible, extra stuff you can edit out later. I think that's the way to do it. I think it's a great method.
Yeah, just write it first and then you'll edit it. You can't edit it before you write it.
Of course, no. Sorry, go ahead, Jules.
No, go on. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh, I was just going to say that some of us are planners and write out long notes ahead of time. Some of us right off the cuff, the pantser style. So yeah, I think it's unique to each of us. We have to find what works for us as individuals.
Yeah.
Like Jules.
Just to go back to what you said about you use dialogue as a crutch. Actually, dialogue's a really important part of the reader and also you as the author to be able to identify what is going on between the characters. My background is education. And one of the exercises I used to do with my students was give them a sentence, and in role play to say that sentence, emphasizing a different sound, different intonation of each word, and the same sentence, and the same short 5-word sentence has about 5 different meanings depending on how you emphasize it. And so that's a really important part of it, because if you have two characters, you can describe them beautifully and have beautiful backdrop going on, but that doesn't tell us anything about who they are. If you've got a character that's going, all right, Jill, that's completely different to say, good morning, Jill, for example.
Right, you're right, absolutely. Yeah, dialogue has so much character in it.
Absolutely. And then if you add into the actual dialogue actions that they're doing as well, then you've got someone who is going, all right, Jill, and then throwing a high five to good morning, Jill, who's then throwing a candlestick at her face. It kind of adds more depth.
That's drastic difference.
Yeah. And so I was trying to think of a heavy object, and a candlestick was the first thing that came to mind. I was thinking of one of the old like silver ones that used to get.
Oh yeah, yeah. We've all played Clue. We've all seen someone get killed with a candlestick before.
Absolutely, yeah. And so yeah, I don't think, whilst it might feel like it's a crutch. That could be a crutch as well. Whilst it seems like it might be a crutch, I think it's important that it's used, because it obviously it depends entirely on the story. I mean, who knows? Cats might not speak at all. Who knows? They might just, purely by body language and by facial expressions and stuff like that. I have no idea, having never interviewed a cat.
Well, I can tell you that my cats are psychic. Like, well, I wouldn't say I wouldn't use the word psychic. I would say that they can communicate. Excuse me, mentally. Yes, thank you. Yes, and then Cheddar, the other character, the outside character, can actually read the minds of other cats without them even being aware. So there's another little layer of that. But yeah,
that's super cool.
Yeah, there is dialogue in my story, but it's not quite. It's not quite as heavy as a story involving humans would be, I guess. So,
what a method that you could use is I'm just thinking in terms of ways of getting to know your characters, is actually come up with some, like morality, for example, and come up with some scenarios as to what they would do with that, or are they adventurous, things like that, and actually create post-it notes with a post-it note with their name on each post-it note, and actually place their name on the side where yes, they are going to do that, no, they're not, and then you've actually got like this sort of spectrum of different types of character flaws and desires and wishes and decision making. And the other thing you could do is just sit back and enjoy the story that's going on, as if it's a film, as if you're watching it, but it just happens to be in your mind somewhere. Because that's a great tool, being able to see it, and then you're able to see it from a more third party point of view. I don't know. They're just some ideas that you could use. But yeah.
No, awesome.
Very cool.
Can I say something about dialogue real quick?
Please do. Yes, jump in.
Okay. With dialogue, I find that when I actually look at the first draft, I'm like, that is a lot of dialogue. So I feel like when you actually do first draft, dialogue is very good to just get it down, get the first draft done. So the technique we learned at university was to go through the whole text and highlight the narrative, the inner thoughts, and the dialogue, so you get to see the different colours. So what I'm going to do when I edit my upcoming book, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to add some more like inner thoughts and action tags and more just narrative, because I do struggle. But I have learned now, as an author, I am just dialogue heavy, and I've just embraced it now.
And I think that's great. I think that each of us have our own way, and that's exactly how it should be. And we evolve. Like Heather, my first book has way less dialogue, and these books have way more. I don't know how it happened that way.
I don't think I did it on purpose. Well, I mean, with the cats, yes, but my first series, the Court Jester series, where it's it's nonfiction. A lot of it's from memory. My issue with dialogue is punctuating it properly, so it will drive me crazy if it's not done properly. And so I have somebody that has to look through that for me, because no matter how much I study or read about punctuating, and I have 2 degrees in English literature and writing, it does not stick with me ever. So that is like the bane of my existence. So I need to get better at being able to do that, and maybe perhaps that will help me expand some of my characters moving forward. So,
do you have plans for other books outside of the cat series?
I mean, yes, I do. There's actually there is quite a few. There is Thistles and Fray. That is a collection of short essays and stories that are also true. Some good, some funny, not as topic heavy. What's the word I want? Not as dark as the Court Jester series, I should say. Okay. I traveled a lot, and there are quite a few stories that, I'm putting out there. Some names are changed, of course, to protect the guilty. So I'll just leave that there. there's quite a few. I have another series. I don't even remember the name of it right now. I revisit it. It's I don't want to say that it's based on people around me, but it's kind of somebody will do or say something which feeds right into a character immediately, and I build a whole story from that. It can be simple shadiness, or it can be, something nice, and I'm like, yeah, that didn't feel right. Like, I don't think that was genuine, and so that leads off into another story and that character being built. So, yeah.
Cool. Bright Halo, what else have you got on the horizon coming up?
Okay, so Bright Halo episode 2 is coming out, so I've got to edit that, and I've got to edit episode 7. I've got to write episode 8. I've got to edit Tower Princess 1, and then write Tower Princess 2. So yeah, I got a lot to do.
Wow. And do you write with notes? Do you plan ahead, or are you more of a pantser? Like, do you have this all planned out in advance, or?
I'm joking. It really depends on the book. It really depends how I feel. Sometimes I will write outline before. Sometimes I'll just like word vomit. I don't know. It really depends on my mood. I'm probably a mood writer, I suppose. That is
I like that. No, that's good. Yeah. Xander, do you want to answer that same question? Anything big on the horizon coming out besides the stuff you're working on that you've already told us?
Let's see. So I have a short story on Amazon that's available. It's called Gehenna, and I have what's it called? The novella that I read an excerpt from. I don't have a set release date just yet because it's still in editing right now. But it'll be out hopefully this year. So there's Doppelganger, and I'm also slowly but surely getting closer to finishing and finalizing the first book of maybe like a 5 or 6 story series called The Wolf's Revenge. Book 1 I'm working on, it's called The Wolf and the Siren Song. I think I've read an excerpt from it on the very first episode.
The piratey one?
Yeah, the pirate one.
Yes.
So there's that. Look forward to that too. Doppelganger, Wolf, and beyond that, I also have I'm also an artist, so I have a comic updating on an app called Webtoon, which is actually kind of funny because as a writer, I'm a planner, but as a comic artist, I'm a pantser, and I've never experienced something like that before, where I plan my writing so much in advance, but with my comic, I remember distinctly like planning something, but in the very moment, I just completely went off script, and I had to go back and edit an episode that I had already worked so hard on and drew. So I just thought I'd mention that. I suppose, like Bright Halo, it depends on the mood and it depends on the project, and I suppose it also depends on the medium. But yeah, that's what I've got going on right now. Doppelganger and Wolf, I'm so grateful and so eager to share those stories with whoever's willing to give them a chance.
Yay!
Honestly. And yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Mixed Fanes, and yeah, I mostly post updates there.
Cool. Well, before we get to the end of the show, I want to mention we have a writing competition going on. It's a 1,000-word short story and poetry competition. And it's just about celebrating creativity. We want people to write something creative and unique and submit it to us. It's the first ever writing competition by the Danu Publishing Company that Jules runs. So it's open enrollment, or open submissions. We're taking any writing right now. Again, limit is 1,000 words, and this is how we're doing it. We want to all the winners are going to be published in a compilation volume. So there's going to be a book that we're going to release with all the writing, and to unify all the writing, we want 3 themes in all the books. We want a wolf, the magnifying glass, and the outer rings of Saturn. So 3 things in every single writing. We want those 3 things represented, and they can mean anything you want. They can be a literal wolf, a magnifying glass, and you can talk about Saturn, or they can be, like I've said before, drinks on a cocktail menu, or references through flying through space in a sci-fi epic or something, you know, but keep it 1,000 words or less. Poetry, even a haiku, if you can fit those 3 elements in, whatever's creative for you. We're asking for a $10 donation to give to the readers who are going to be going through all the work that you guys submit. And yeah. Oh, and last thing, the published volume that we released, 15% of the proceeds are going to go to the Trevor Project, which is a nonprofit suicide prevention organization that helps particularly with LGBTQ youth. So we love them, and we've donated to them before. And so please submit your work to, right there's the email, submit to the competition. Send us a writing of 1,000 words or less with a wolf, magnifying glass, outer rings of Saturn. Boom! Yay!
Yeah, it was
very cool.
All right. Well, I am going to say a massive thank you to the 4 of you for coming today, and for our 3 lovely guests. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing your thoughts and your readings, and love you to come back again and visit us if we return. That'd be awesome. Do keep in touch. Don't disappear. Either through social media handles, or come and join us over on the Discord for our community. But without further ado, I'm going to say thank you very much. Have a lovely, lovely, lovely day.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.